get started. Good morning, everybody. My name is Kat Brooks. I am the executive director of the Justice Teams Network and the co-founder of the Anti-Police Terror Project. Today marks the beginning of the 7th annual Reclaiming King's Radical Legacy Weekend. There was a national call 7 years ago to reclaim the radical legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King, which Oakland responded to with direct actions that include everything from storming the mayor's office to feeding the hungry, and then taking to the streets to uplift the fact that while King's legacy has been whitewashed, while he has been watered down, right, to an image and a character that people can feel comfortable with, we take this weekend to remember that he was a revolutionary, he was a scholar, he was willing to put his body on the line for the liberation of Black bodies. People mostly know King from his "I Have a Dream" speech, but King also said, "We are on the side of the wealthy and the secure while we create a hell for the poor." And it is sad that in this city, the home of the Black Panther Party, the home of so many progressive movements, that is the truth, that we are pushing a corporate agenda that is making it hell for the poor. There's a fight for the soul of Oakland right now. We have fall progressives pushing neoliberal agendas, but Oaklanders are clear, that they are awake. We saw that in these recent elections where they voted for true progressives, people with a proven track record, are standing on the side of the people, standing with the people, being by the people and for the people, saying that it is not okay that we have 6,000 to 8,000 unhoused people sleeping on the streets every night. It is not okay that renters are being pushed out of their homes. It is not okay that we have a police department entering the 20th year of federal receivership. Those things are not okay. That is not the Oakland that we love, that we live in, and that we fight for. And so this weekend is a celebration of King's legacy, a remembering of what it takes to get to where it is that we're trying to go, and putting those who would see our poor, our hungry, our Black, our brown, our indigenous, our queer be invisibilized in the name of profit, that is absolutely not the Oakland that we are willing to live in, and we are here to continue the fight. I want
Thank you, Kat Brooks. Thank you, everyone, for coming together to remember the radical legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I want to start by quoting from Dr. King's book, "Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community," from 1967, because I think this quote is really important right now in the political context that we are living in. So he said in this book, "The contemporary tendency in our society is to base our distribution on scarcity, which has vanished, and to compress our abundance into the overfed mouths of the middle and upper classes until they gag with superfluity. If democracy is to have a breath of meaning, it is necessary to adjust this inequity. It is not only moral, but it is also intelligent. We are wasting and degrading human life by clinging to archaic thinking." And with that quote, I want to remind ourselves that it is this thinking of scarcity, of austerity, of tightening our belts in good times and bad without sharing the tremendous wealth in this country or in this region. And that is exactly what we are fighting to restore: the abundance, the equity, the sharing of wealth that will make our communities whole. And one of the things that I think we all know, because we are remembering the radical legacy of Dr. King, is that our communities have been defunded for decades at every level of government, defunded in terms of housing, jobs, healthcare, and more. And as that defunding has happened, what has grown is our policing and carceral state. Our police budgets have grown to be the solution to almost every social ill that we have. And we know, especially here in Oakland, as we are reimagining public safety, that what will keep us safe are the housing, jobs, healthcare, and other basic needs that people have. And so that's exactly what we seek to refund, to restore, and to reimagine. We want to do that work at the neighborhood level, at the local level, because that's where change happens, as well as the state and the national level. I want to just briefly say that Last week at the city's inauguration, we celebrated progressive leaders like Council Member Carol Fife, who were standing with the working people, the Black and Brown communities of this city. And we know that it is far past time for our council to follow the progressive leadership of the people of Oakland, like many of you. It's time for the council, the mayor, the city administrator to come together and work towards the progressive priorities that Oaklanders voted for: housing as a human right, safety focused on prevention and healing, and also a progressive corporate tax that will raise the critical revenue that our communities need. It is by addressing all of those issues to refund, to restore, and reimagine that we can make Oakland the place that we know it can be. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Bass, and thank you for actually saying the theme of this year, which I did not. Refund, restore, reimagine. That is this year's theme, and tying reimagine to the dream that King had for this nation and the dream that Oaklanders have to live in a city that is truly reflective of the progressive brand that we have across the country. We're seeing this fight to refund, restore, and reimagine in the areas of housing and education and public safety and environmental justice. Our next speaker, Liz Sook, who is the Interim Executive Director of Oakland Rising and works across an organization that works across our city, across ideologies, across issue areas to build a progressive Oakland. Liz?
Thank you, Kat, and thank you for your words. My words will be brief. Hi, my name is Liz Huck. I'm the Interim Executive Director of Oakland Rising, a multilingual, multiracial collaborative to engage and mobilize folks living in the flatlands of East and West Oakland to participate in the electoral political process to ensure the shared dreams of wealth, happiness, safety, and opportunity for all. Our voter base includes 60,000 voters in the flatlands. Dr. King said during this call to join the People's Party, we have moved from an era of civil rights to an era of human rights, an era where we can call upon to raise certain basic questions about the whole society. We have been in a reform movement, but after Selma and after the Voting Rights Bill, we moved into a new era, which must be an era of revolution. We must recognize that we cannot solve our problems now until there is a radical redistribution of economic and political power. Today, we are calling on our city to reimagine this radical distribution of economic and political power, and our path forward begins with the reinvestment and restoration of our most marginalized communities. It is time now. We need to hold corporations accountable for the incredible wealth they bleed from our communities and the bloated budgets allocated to our police. Don't be fooled into complacency to believe that we don't have the means to care for our people. We have the imagination and we have the people power to organize and build the communities we live in to keep us safe. The income gap between the rich and the poor, the budget gaps between the police and our parks and services only shows us we have means to take care of all of us. As we reclaim MLK's legacy, we reclaim our moral compass to take care of everyone in the city. So join this weekend, join us in this fight against austerity, join us in this fight for the moral compass in our budget, join us in the fight for the soul of our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. So throughout the weekend, starting today, what you will see is various groups holding virtual actions, town halls, webinars, teach-ins, leading up to, of course, Monday at noon, where we will have our annual march, which with respect to COVID-19 and keeping people safe will be a car caravan from the Port of Oakland to East Oakland. And we're going to East Oakland in large part because of what is happening there and the people and the tragedy and the trauma that is being invisibilized. I want to introduce now Ashara Ekendayo, an independent curator and steward at Artist as a First Responder, who is part of the leadership of an event, Black Women Wailing, Black Women Healing, that has Black women responding as first responders, Black women artists and advocates responding to what is happening in Deep East, condemning our city's response, which has been simply to criminalize our young people and invoking a healing bomb upon our city. Ashara.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Kat, and thank you, APTP, for this continued work in our communities across the United States, and definitely the impact that we understand and feel across the planet. Want to say that I'm reading you all this morning from my home in Oakland, honoring the land, the Ohlone people, the stewards of this land, who continue to provide the energy for us to be fueled for our creative actions. And so this work, we know, has its place inside of our cultural places, in ourselves and in our societies and our ecosystems. And we are Oakland's mothers and daughters, sisters, aunties, grandmothers, spouses, partners, and elders whose hearts are shattering, and we are artists. And that means that, yes, we are advocates and organizers, but we are Black women first. And through this lens, this understanding of artist as first responder, we have to reframe, and reclaim artist, and we have to reclaim first responder. As we've come to understand first responders, as persons who are designated and dispatched to respond to an emergency at the scene of an accident, right? Natural disasters, terrorist attacks, all of those things that happen in our lives, and we have come to know them in a different way in the United States in the last week. We're also adding that we are also beings who respond to threats of white supremacy, colonization, sexism, ableism, transphobia, and at the traumatic intersectional experiences of marginalized people. So Black Women Respond is an art action ceremony that begins this Sunday, January 17th at 1 p.m. Pacific online. It's for Black women. Black Women Respond, Black Women Wailing, Black Women Healing. We'll hold space for righteous anger and for grieving. We'll hold space, we'll hold time, we'll hold breath through the 5 stages of grief. And what we come to understand is that artists deal with and respond at the edges of birth and death. So I'll close by saying that more questions unfold, more opportunities for us to move. So starting on Sunday, for the next 7 weeks, our creative art practice will ask the following questions. What would it mean to center the experiences of Black women? In discussions of public safety is the first one. What are the structural processes and logistics that explain why public institutions continually fail to keep Black women and Black people safe? Also, how do we make our communities safer without criminalization or increasing the presence of police in our communities? What are the artistic and cultural responses that create collective safety, and how do we show up as first responder in situations of need? And finally, how can we intervene in these public institutions in ways that protect all Black people's lives and Black women's lives and bodies? So I invite you all to join us at the beginning of this. This is an online ceremony ritual that is for Black women only, Black women of all genders. And so information will be on our website, on the Facebook Live event page, as well as on the APTP website and the page as well. Thank you. Peace and love to everyone this morning.
Thank you, Ashara. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for your work. We are going to keep our attention focused on East Oakland, a part of our city that does not get the attention, the resources, the support, or the services that it so rightly deserves. The part of our city which really is the last stronghold of Black bodies in the city of Oakland. Oakland was once dubbed Chocolate City. We are now less than a quarter of the population. I want to turn it over now to Carolyn Johnson with the Black Cultural Zone, CDC, and East Oakland Black Cultural Zone Collaborative. CJ.
Thank you, Kat. I'm here to speak about intercommunal violence. So violence from within adds a level of tragedy for our communities, first and foremost with the victim and the violator and the families that are left behind. Intercommunal violence often begets a cycle of revenge and continued violence for generations. And at some point, the initial cause of this generational cycle is obscure, a distant memory. The next level of tragedy from intercommunal violence is the conversion and weaponization of the conditions which have been heaped on us. Taken a step further, we must chart a pathway to peace that addresses the conditions which set us up for intercommunal violence. Improving the quality of life in our communities is a must. We are not what we have survived or are currently surviving. We hold the keys to our healing in the memories of peaceful villages where all children belong to all people and everyone was your brother or sister, your family. We carried these memories in our melanin through the Middle Passage, through enslavement, through terrorist attacks where our towns were burned and our lives were savagely taken. We carry these memories even today, despite the mobs who were activated not just by Trump, but by the sight of a Black president, First Lady, and First Family. The criminal injustice system in this country is yet another tool in the toolkit of oppression, with far too many being trapped at the earliest age possible. And at the same time, the US president gives out pardons like party favors. We must have community tools to address conflict and reparations when we do harm to each other. We can solve this within our community, and our pledge at the Black Cultural Zone is to do so together with you. We will center our Black arts and culture. We will hold place for Black people and Black businesses. We will build a strong Black economy, and we will develop lives where intercommunal violence is not an option because we are too busy loving each other and remembering who we are. So we must refund community. We must restore our memory, and we must reimagine our collective agenda for liberation. Thank you.
Thank you, CJ. I'm now going to turn it over to Sabir Lockett, who is the Director of Fame and Initiative of eBase. Sabir.
Thank you, Kat, and thank you, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Sabir Lockett. I work at the East Bay Alliance for a Sustainable Economy, where I'm Director of the Faith Alliance for a More Economy. When I think of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I am reminded of his notion of beloved community. Fundamental to the concept of beloved community is inclusiveness, both economic and social. The notion that all can share in Earth's bounties, described as a society in which the social product is shared far more equally than it is today. The beloved community also describes a society in which all are embraced and none discriminated against. Economic and social justice are twin pillars supporting a beloved community. And these two pillars lead to healthy communities. If we can change policies that lessen income inequality, like raising the minimum wage and increasing taxes on corporations and the wealthy amongst us, it is most likely to lead to a significant population health benefits. Likewise, if we can reduce police spending, reimagine a world where appropriate finances are put into communities for mental health, housing, and employment services, this will also lead to significant health benefits, because the beloved community in the moral imperative does not have the hypervigilant state which comes with a price. And that price is 24/7 flight or fight response. The price of fear and hunger, fear and homelessness, and fear and being mistreated, all as a result of systemic racism. Dr. King devoted his life to creating a beloved community. Doing so, he showed us the path to society that maximizes empathy, compassion, and love, and also leads to health and well-being. We can realize Dr. King's dream, but to get there, we need to share the social products more equally and to provide a livable income for all, while at the same time removing any of the structural barriers that promote or allow racism, discrimination, and terrorism. I am also reminded of his fight for justice. The night before his assassination in April 1968, Martin Luther King Jr. told a group of striking sanitation workers in Memphis, Tennessee, We've got to give ourselves to this struggle until the end. Nothing will be more tragic than to stop at this point in Memphis. We've got to keep on going. We got to keep this through. I have always been inspired by this, and also inspired by the workers carrying a sign that said, "I am a man," which signified the dignity and the power of the individual who refused to give up and give in to mistreatment. He also stated, "You are demonstrating that we can stick together. You are demonstrating that we are all tied in a single garment of destiny, and that if one Black person suffers, if one Black person is down, we are all down." Under regular circumstances, every essential service worker faced unfair wages and discriminatory practices. COVID has been a apocalyptic moment, which has revealed further the roots of racism in our economy. We must continue to fight for workers to have fair wages, health benefits, and a voice on the job. At the core of our mission at eBase and Fame is the creation of a sustainable economy with good jobs for all. eBase strives to change the expectations of work, particularly for low-wage jobs primarily held by Mexican and Black people. We believe that all work is valued and everyone's contributions are necessary to make our economy run smoothly. All working people should have dignity in the workplace and be paid enough to succeed and flourish. In Oakland, we must in this time continue to fight for emergency paid sick leave for those impacted by COVID, and to create the Department of Workplace and Employment Standards so our essential service workers will have recourse against unfair labor practices. And I'll end with one more quote by Dr. King. It's very essential. Dr. King said, "In every society, its protectors, it has its protectors of the status quo and its fraternities of the indifferents who are notorious for sleeping through the revolution. But today, our very survival depends on our and to reimagine Dr. King's dream and to live into the beloved community that we all hope for, and stand united with our community and continue to push forward as one." Thank you.
Thank you, Sabir. We have just a couple more speakers, and part of why we have so many speakers is because the power of the progressive movement in Oakland is in our coalition building, in our commitment to coalition, in our commitment to building across race, class, and creed, collective struggle for collective liberation. And on that note, I want to introduce my friend and my comrade, George Galvez, the Executive Director of Communities United for Restorative Youth Justice. George?
Thank you. Good morning, relatives. It's a good day. My name is George Galvez, Executive Director and co-founder of Courage, Communities United for Restorative Youth Justice, based in East Oakland, California. And I'd like to just kind of share that, growing up in elementary school and middle school, as we were taught about Dr. King, we were taught this co-opted, sanitized, whitewashed version of Dr. King that was really meant about social control. And it was about behaving well, it was about assimilation. And so I want to just give thanks and love and credit to our relatives from APTP, my sister Kat Brooks, and all those who are reclaiming the radical legacy of Dr. King, because Dr. King described that very same kind of peace in his sermon, When Peace Becomes Obnoxious. And he described it as a negative peace. And so we're sick and tired of being sick and tired, in the words of Fannie Lou Hamer. We're going to continue to upset the setup. We're going to continue to demand to defund the police and refund the people. And it's going to be a takeover, not a makeover. So that's short and sweet. And that's all I got to say, y'all. Power to the people. Peace.
That might be the shortest speech I've ever heard you give, Brother George, but you said it all. And harkening back to actually where we met, and often people ask me when I started working specifically on issues of police terror and state-sponsored violence, and it was in 2009, following the murder of Oscar Grant. And since that time, I've been part of a community, a coalition, a group of people with our eyes focused on justice, right? Not just for Oscar, but for every single life stolen from us from law enforcement. One of the greatest heroes of that movement is Oscar's mother, Reverend Wanda Johnson, and she joins us this morning. Mama Wanda.
Wow, thanks, Kat, for that introduction. Thank you for having me as a part of your program on today. I, want to encourage each and every one of you to fight for what is right, to not give up, to not throw in the towel, but to stay in the ring. Even when there's times it seems like of quietness, we still have to continue to make noise. When my son Oscar was killed January 1st, 2009, at the Fruitvale BART station by someone who was hired to protect and serve, my life changed forever. It has brought myself and my family into a place where we want to ensure that justice is served for others. And so today, we're still fighting 12 years later to get another officer who instigated the situation with my son being killed, charged for felony murder. We don't want anything less. And we have to, as a community of people, have the mindset to ensure that we fight for justice for all, that we fight when we don't feel like fighting, that we fight when it's not conditional to fight, that we fight when things seem like we're winning. We have to stay in the ring. You know, I always think about George Foreman when he was boxing. He didn't just throw in the towel and stop fighting, but he stayed in the ring. Whether he got knocked down, but he got back up, he stayed in the ring. And that's what we have to do. We have to continue to fight. So I'm asking you to sign the petition that we have out on social media, requesting charging the officer. I'm asking you to not just sign, but to be a part of this movement with us, to join in and work to ensure that we get justice for my son, Oscar Grant. And as we get justice for him, we will work with other families to get justice for them as well, because we cannot stop. We have to continue on this journey as long as we live. So I, again, thank you for having me on the session today. And I want to say to you, don't give up the fight. Stay in the ring. Look at the prize that's ahead of us. And that is a prize where we as a people will be treated and equally as other nationalities. Thank you. Again, to sign the petition for my son, Oscar Grant. Thank you.
Thank you, Mama Wanda. Thank you so much for joining us. And there is a national call tomorrow at 3:00 p.m. to continue to build support to reopen the case, to charge Tony Peroni, who we all consider just as guilty as Johannes Messerly in the murder of Oscar Grant. You can join that call, get more information in the link that is being placed in the chat right now. We're going to turn our attention to another place where Oakland said it wanted to see change, that it wanted to see investment, and that is in our young people. The first person I'm going to introduce is Mike Hutchinson, one of the newest directors of the Oakland Unified School District. Mike.
Great, thank you, Kat, and thank you, APTP, and everyone else who's here today. This is a real honor for me to even be a part of this press conference. I really feel like my history and my family's history is a testament to the movement. My parents met working in Freedom Summer King and marched Selma to Montgomery too. I'm born and raised here in Oakland and grew up in the shadow of the Panthers. And my great-great-great-grandfather, John Hutchinson, the first Hutchinson, was born in slavery, fought for his freedom, and acquired land for his family and for the community. And so we're sitting here today as a part of a continuum, as part of the journey towards liberation for our people in this country. And I think it's a really important time as we can see what's happening around us. I really want to stress to everyone, as you see all these great organizers here, and we have all these organizations in Oakland who have been putting in work for decades, what we really need is for everyone individually to get involved. We've seen people move into leadership now in Oakland who have been working with us in the streets for years. And now it's really the time for all of us as a community to stand up and to make our voices heard and demand better going forward. So hopefully as this weekend kicks off, everyone will make a personal pledge to get involved and get engaged. And hopefully this is just the start as we move forward through this year. With both the school board and the city council's new leadership, we can chart a new direction in our city, and Oakland is positioned to influence what happens around the world. So hopefully this is just the start as we really work to reclaim Dr. King's legacy of radical liberation of all peoples. So thank you, and please everyone, let's get involved and let's make this change happen.
Thank you, Mike, for joining us this morning. I'm going to have Daniel once again put in the chat the link to the actions that are happening over the weekend. COVID says we can't be outside, but it doesn't mean that we can't be organizing and doing what we do, right? Demanding liberation, justice, and equity in the city of Oakland. Mayor Schaaf's probably happy because this will be the first year in 7 years that we actually don't end up on her doorstep. So there's the benefit, I guess, for her there. But there, in addition to actions and teachings and webinars, there are some major campaigns that are being announced this weekend. And so I'm going to turn it over to my friends in the Oakland Education Association to talk about the fight for Black students. I'm going to start with Keith Brown. Keith?
Good morning, and thank you, Kat. I'm Keith Brown. I'm a middle school teacher in Oakland, and I'm president of the Oakland Education Association. And the educators of Oakland stand united with APTP and the community in the call to refund, restore, and reimagine this Dr. King weekend, with the actions culminating this Monday. For decades, Black students and families have experienced significant barriers and anti-Black racist structures in OUSD schools and have suffered from a lack of investment in their success. The public education system, like all American systems in the 400 years of its history, has failed Black children and families. As white America comes to understanding how deeply embedded racial biases, hatred are in our housing, policing, education, and other facets of government, we stand at a point of incredible opportunity to finally dismantle the white supremacist systems that have always denied Black children the full promise of education and opportunity. Over the last 20 years, through school closures in Black neighborhoods and the gentrification that it has spurned, the over-criminalization of Black youth, and the failure to adequately resource schools serving Black families, 2/3 of Black students have been forced out of the district. 17 of 20 schools closed in the last 20 years in Black neighborhoods. Black children in OUSD have faced the greatest obstacles and have been granted inadequate resources to allow them to thrive and succeed. OUSD has finally done what the Black Organizing Project has been fighting for over the last 10 years, remove police from Oakland schools. We need to keep moving towards justice for Black students. This includes the work we as the Oakland Education Association have been doing to create a culture of inclusion and anti-racist practices with our educators. OEA, as part of the J4OS Black Working Group, in partnership with the Black Organizing Project, PLAN, Parent Voices, and other Black-led organizations, have convened 150 Black students and families to envision solutions that will allow Black students to thrive in OUSD. Now is the time to implement these solutions and invest in our 8,314 remaining Black students in the Oakland Unified School District.
Keith, I'm gonna have you pass it to who's next, because there's 3 of you presenting on this campaign today.
I believe next we have Director Van Cedric Williams.
Thank you, President Keith. Appreciate that. Want to thank you, Kat, and APTP for having me today. Really appreciate it. On Wednesday, January 13th,
2021, at our first OUSD school board meeting of the year, I introduced the Black Lives Matter at School Week of Action resolution, because it's time that we stop talking about Black lives and start taking action. OUSD has a responsibility to protect Black students from systemic racism. We need a new Black deal for our Black students right now, for their parents and for their communities. It is a time for solutions that matches the scale of the problem of OUSD. Our students are not doing the best they can. OUSD can create community schools that center Black thriving and joy so that Black students feel a sense of belonging. Their identity is affirmed and they have resources they need to succeed. We can create a plan of accountability to Black students and families to use their resources to target solutions for crises where too few Black children can read, and they are too few and too many are not ready for college to career when they graduate. We must close the opportunity gap for our Black children because their Black lives matter in our schools. The COVID-19 pandemic has revealed and exacerbated the differential and negative treatment of Black children compared to other students and made clear we must act now. We cannot wait for the pandemic to end to address anti-Black racism in Oakland schools. Therefore, on Martin Luther King's weekend, in the spirit of radical Martin Luther King's revolutionary vision, I am submitting a new resolution to the board for adoption next month, the Reparations for Black Students resolution that will close the opportunity gap for our students and support our Black children and families and transform OUSD. I ask for you to stand with me. And I want to thank you. I want to say thank you to my fellow director, District 5, Mike Hutchinson, and Director 7, District Director Cliff Thompson for signing on to stand together. Join me in providing for truly equitable solutions for our students. It is time for the district to begin to invest in Black students and families to repair generations of harm. It is time to make sure our Black children are excelling academically.
Thank you, Director. And I believe bringing up the tail end of this announcement is Jessica Black with the Black Organizing Project.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us as well. We stand in firm solidarity with all of our partners on the call. In the words of Dr. King, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Now is the time. Now is the time for real transformation. Now is the time for us to make sure that we are creating systems that children can actually thrive. Yes, OUSD did take a radical stance and eliminate police out of schools, but that's not enough. We have to deal with the anti-racist and anti-Black ideology. The school to prison pipeline has an ideology that is connected to it, and that is what we have to dismantle. We are now pushing for a community-driven process that has community control and school board accountability. It is time that the school board sees the community as the solution. It is time that the school board trust in the community to develop our children inside of this education system. We are standing in firm solidarity also with the Oakland Education Association, and it is time for students to receive reparations for all of the harm that has been caused to Black students. In the words of Dr. King, the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at this time, at this time of challenge and controversy. We are in a time where this country is now catching up and recognizing the harm that has been done to Black people. And so on every level, as we come together in this Black New Deal coalition, on every level, we are fighting and we are demanding that Black people in Oakland, not only do we receive reparations, but also that we receive adequate and equal treatment in housing, in education, in employment, in healthcare, in the criminal injustice system. The time is now. So you can join us this week by signing on to the Black reparations for Black students resolution. There should be a link in the chat. In addition to that, if you are looking to be involved in creating real transformation in school culture and climate, then you can also look on the Black Organizing Project's Facebook page and sign up to get involved, to be a part of creating solutions and alternatives to the injustices and the discrimination and the racism that we have historically been receiving for years. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. I want to acknowledge that we have been joined by Uncle Bobby, Oscar Grant's uncle. Uncle Bobby, Wanda spoke. Do you want to say a couple of words about the campaign?
Yes, Kat, thank you too for having me today. Definitely, first, we're clear as a family that it was the Oakland community that stood with us, cried with us, went back and forth to court with us. I think most importantly, shouted out that I am Oscar Grant, and embraced the family in such a way that we were able, for the first time in California state history, as this community should know, was able to put an officer in jail for the murder of Oscar Grant. It was the first time in California state history, and it goes to it shows just how this community can bring about real systemic change. So definitely a shout out to you, Kat, for having this weekend, Martin Luther King Legacy Weekend, bringing the community together again to speak on the issues and to bring real awareness and systemic change. But for us, as you know, or many of you may not know, on October 5th, Nancy O'Malley reopened the Oscar Grant case. And for those who may not know, a quick backdrop. Oscar was murdered on January 1st, 2009 at the Fruitvale BART station. And as a result of that murder, there was a movie produced called Fruitvale Station. I think we've all in the Bay Area are pretty familiar with Oscar's story. So I won't go into the details of what happened. But on that platform, Johannes Mesley murdered Oscar. But he wasn't the only officer that was responsible for that murder. Tony Peroni, who came up on the platform first, is the reason why Oscar's murdered today. That officer was never charged for the murder of Oscar Grant, and still today could be employed in another policing agency, either in the state of California or somewhere in this country. But recently, in 2019, the Myers-Narvi report that had been hidden from the world for the last 11 years had to come to light. And when it did, in that report, it states that Tony Peroni is the reason why Oscar Grant is murdered. He was never charged. And part of the reason why he was never charged, so that you'll know, was that during the trial, the district attorney office convinced us that he would become state evidence against Johannes Mesley, and he didn't. He basically pleaded the fifth, didn't testify against Johannes Mesley. And so the district attorney said the strategy failed and we would like to get him after the trial. Of course, after the trial, Johannes Mesley, we went to Nancy O'Malley and asked about charges be charged on Tony Peroni for the murder of Oscar Grant. And she stated, Nancy O'Malley, that Alameda County went back and forth to LA, cost them so much money that they had no money to prosecute or charge Tony Peroni for the murder of Oscar Grant. Of course, we were disappointed. We left. We came back about a year and a half later and found out that Tony Peroni had went into the military basically to evade being charged or being charged for this murder, and stayed gone for about 3 to 4 years. On his arrival back, Nancy O'Malley and them said that the judge had tied this case up in such a way that they wouldn't win, but we had an opportunity to get him on California unemployment fraud, which even in that respect, Oscar was murdered by him And we're looking for charges to be placed on him for the murder of Oscar Grant. And again, we were told that they couldn't do it. And so here we are today on October 5th, 2020, Nassau Malley reopens the case. And we're now at a point to where we need the community support, the embrace that we received, of course, 12 years ago, to really bring about the felony murder charges to be placed on Tony Peroni for the murder of Oscar Grant. Nassau Malley, we know it's going to take public pressure, as it did to get Mesley charged, to get her to charge Tony Peroni. Sign the petition that we have out. It can be located at www.justiceforoscargrant.com. And that you support this cause. Definitely call Nassau Malley, insisting that Tony Peroni is charged for the murder of Oscar Grant. You know, we have a national Zoom call tomorrow that we'd like to invite you all to. It's going to be happening at 3 o'clock. And I believe I sent Kat the link for the Zoom call. So please come on and get the updates, because the attorneys will be speaking in regards to the charges that should be applied to Tony Peroni. And then we are scheduled to meet Nassau Malley on the 19th, this January 19th, which is Tuesday, with our attorneys to discuss the possible charges that Tony Peroni should be charged. I'm sorry, to show her the charges that Tony Peroni should receive for the murder of Oscar Grant. You know, I would be understating the fact that the last 12 years has been extremely challenging to us, because we've still been fighting for the simple fact that we want justice. This community, you know, and the activism that it has been put forth for so many years here in the Bay Area, has been tremendous in every aspect. You know, Black Organizing Project and what they did with the schools, removing police from the schools, you know, and just on the front line of those who been challenging this essence of police violence in this country, especially here in the Bay Area. So definitely want to thank you, Kat, again, for giving me a few minutes to share our struggle, you know, our pain, and definitely the support that we're asking for. You know, thank you for doing this. You do this every year. And so with that, I'd like to say from Oscar that we love all of you. We appreciate all of you. And just we look forward to really bringing about systemic change in this community.
Personally, thank you for being on the front line.
You know, and you know, I should say this too, Kat, thank you for, you know, that beautiful poem that you came out. What must I tell my daughter today? I forget the title of it, but you know, you've been on the front line with us for all these years, has really meant so much to us, and still here, you know, because many of us struggle and fade, you know, things happen in life, you know, so through some of us, we've been through sickness and pain and loss of family members. I lost my father. I know you lost your mother in this struggle, but we're still here. This goes beyond just us. And for all of you that are listening, you know, thank you for doing the work that you're doing. Again, Kat, I'm closing with that. We love you and thank you.
I love you too, Uncle Bobby. And I will stand with you and the family and in Oscar's name until I take my last breath. And those are facts. And, you know, something that people don't talk about enough or realize is that it really is the struggle for justice for Oscar that has shaped the last 12 years of the fight to transform policing, not just in the city, but in the state and across the country. And it's been an honor to stand with you and Mama Wanda and the nation and George and all of us. So let's walk this last mile and let's get Tony Peroni held accountable for what he did. The links to the conference call as well as the petition are in the chat. We have one more speaker, and it's fitting that we end with this. We know that the last campaign that Dr. King was working on was the Black sanitation workers strike in Memphis, Tennessee, which really also began his fallout, right? The state's unwillingness to even feign niceties with him. And that was because he was marrying race and class, right? It began to not just talk about race, but also to talk about class and capitalism and imperialism and poverty, and was on the precipice of launching what would have been the largest campaign for justice for poor working class people in this country. And one of those powerful collaborations we have here in the city of Oakland is that between labor and community. And I want to introduce Brandon Dawkins with SEIU 10 to 1. Brandon.
Good morning. Thank you, Kat. Thank you, APTP, for the invite. You know, SEIU Local 10 to 1 and, you know, all the labor unions in the Bay Area, you know, we stand firm on, you know, supporting the defunding the police. The reason for this is the city of Oakland, good majority of the workforce are temporary part-time. And if you look around Oakland and you see a lot of the city services that the residents use, those services are currently being neglected because we don't have enough in our workforce to take care of the services that the residents use, like the parks. If you go around, you notice that the parks above Highway 13 look great, but when you come to the flats, when you come to the west, when you come to the east, and you drive around and you see unmaintained grass, trash all around the park, not being maintained, old play structures, those are parks that my union brothers and sisters are tasked of maintaining, but cannot do that because we just don't have the workforce to do it. When you ask for city workers to take care of parks and you only have a temporary part-time workforce, that's going to leave some of those services behind. So when you defund the police and refund the community, you're going to refund and you're going to put those monies back into the services that the city of Oakland deserve and that the city of Oakland actually pay taxes for. The residents from Oakland pay taxes for. So it's very important. You know, we need to, you know, hire more city of Oakland workers to take care of the rest of the city. You know, our parking enforcement officers, those are TPT employees. And, you know, some of them have been TPT employees for over 20 years. That's unacceptable in Oakland. But yet the police department, they have a blank check. All the overtime that they do, some cash in 200 and 300,000 a year in overtime, which is absolutely unacceptable. So, you know, we stand with, you know, defunding the police and refunding the community, because not only does it help our union brothers and sisters maintain a job, maintain employment in Oakland, but it also helps our neighbors. It also helps our children. It also helps our schools. So, you know, once again, you know, thank you, Kat. Thank you, APTP. You know, we are standing with you, and we will continue until the wheels fall off. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. I know you will till the wheels fall off. That concludes our speakers for this press conference, a kickoff to the 7th Annual Anti-Police Terror Project's Reclaiming King's Radical Legacy Weekend. I want to open it up now. If media has any questions for any of our speakers, you can place it in the chat or you can ask verbally.
Hi, this is Alex Hall from KQED Public Radio. Can you hear me?
Yes, Alex.
Great. Thank you so much for having this and for opening it up to journalists. As I've been listening to your statements, I've noticed that there hasn't been a lot of conversation, really none, about the recent violence at the Capitol and the violence that many are anticipating in the coming days. And I wondered if that is intentional. And I guess my question is, do you think that there should be a conversation or a focus on that violence? Or is the intention to, you know, stay focused on the organizing around education for Black students, housing, justice for us, for grant, and to not let those recent events be a distraction?
You know, Alex, it actually wasn't intentional to not talk about it. You know, we've been planning this for, you know, as you can imagine, quite some time. That said, a couple things that I want to say. One, my belief is that the biggest impact that we can make in this political climate is locally, right? This is where we can reach, touch, feel, see our elected officials. This is where we can build power. This is where we can implement policies that actually change the quality of people's lives. The second thing that I would say is it is, however, also important for Oaklanders to not feel like we are immune from that violence, that we are safe from that violence or distanced from that violence. We have seen over the last few years multiple attempts from white supremacist groups to make inroads in the city of Oakland. We know here in Oakland, the bust of Breonna Taylor was just vandalized. We know that there are homes where all lives matter are spray painted on people's houses. We know that the violence of the Oakland Police Department and the violence of a lot of this administration's policies are rooted in white supremacist ideology. And so we've actually been telling people, you know, to be careful if you are going outside, if you're Black or brown or indigenous or queer or an immigrant, you know, to walk in pairs, to look over your shoulders. We responded when Trump was elected. We've worked in this formation, actually, a lot of people that are on this call to push back against federal policies that impact our lives. And we've doubled down on ensuring that Oakland is a safe haven. Oakland is a beacon of light. Oakland is a vanguard for how you do progressive politics right. Does anybody else want to respond to that question? Okay. Any other questions from press? Okay, well, this has been an hour-long press conference, so I'm going to wrap us up. Again, there are a series of actions that are taking place Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Daniel will place the list of those events in the chat. And then Monday, we will gather at the Port of Oakland at noon and car caravan safely to East Oakland, demanding peace in the East, housing for all, reimagine public safety, and to defund OPD and reinvest in our communities. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today.